Viewer discretion is advised. The following is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is a dramatized summary based on publicly available reports, including courtroom coverage from inner-city press. Day 5 of the federal trial involving Diddy comms was already expected to be intense. But no one could have predicted what would happen next. Diddy sat at the defense table, visibly strained, his eyes downcast. The case had drawn massive public attention, but this day shifted everything. It started when the back doors opened and 50 Cent walked in. Dressed in a sharp gray suit and dark sunglasses, he entered the courtroom quietly but deliberately. The room froze. For over a decade, 50 Cent had been one of the only public figures openly critical of Diddy. Until now, it had mostly played out in interviews and social media. But this was different. This was personal and in person. His presence sent a ripple through the gallery. Some whispered. Others stared. Even Diddy noticed his posture changed immediately. Legal aides leaned in. Security stood a little taller. The energy shifted. Cassie returned to the stand as planned. Her testimony continued with composure and clarity. The defense, already rattled from the day before, looked visibly uneasy. Cameras outside captured the moment, and within hours, headlines lit up across social media. This wasn't just about one case anymore. This was about power, silence, and public accountability, and Day 5 was the day those lines began to blur. The sound of papers stopped. Cassie's attorney turned. Even Diddy froze. No one expected him to show, at least not in person. For weeks, 50 Cent had made waves online. Cryptic posts, past interview clips, subtle jabs. But this was different. This was real. He didn't say a word. He entered quietly, took a seat near the back, folded his arms, and stared. Directly at Diddy, the prosecution exchanged glances. The defense team tensed. One of Diddy's lawyers leaned in, whispering quickly, but Diddy wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on 50 Cent like he was staring at a memory that refused to fade. The judge gave a brief nod in acknowledgement but said nothing. Still, the room shifted. It was clear something was coming. Diddy's posture changed. The calm exterior started to slip. His hands twitched. His jaw tightened. He knew 50 Cent hadn't come just to observe. He was there to be seen. When the lunch recess hit, the crowd outside surged. Cameras rolled. Reporters gathered. Then 50 Cent finally spoke. "I'm here because I've watched this industry protect the wrong people for too long," he said. "Cassie's brave for doing what she's doing. She's not alone anymore." He didn't stop there. He talked about the silence that surrounds power, about things in the past that now seem impossible to ignore. He confirmed that he'd shared material with Cassie's legal team, old communications, photos, even contacts with past employees. Then he made a bold announcement. He was funding an independent investigation, hiring private investigators to look deeper, not for publicity, he said, but because too many people are still afraid to speak. Cassie's team issued a brief statement thanking him for his support. Diddy's lawyers dismissed the moment as a distraction, but they were visibly shaken. Back in the courtroom, the mood was thick. Diddy didn't glance at the gallery. He just tapped his fingers over and over on the desk. Diddy sat at the defense table, his breathing heavy, eyes locked forward. Across the room, 50 Cent remained motionless, arms crossed, gaze fixed. The silence between them spoke volumes. Defense requested a private sidebar with the judge. Whispers swirled. Some speculated they might seek a gag order on public statements. But it was already too late. 50's courthouse comments were everywhere. His support went viral, breaking open a long-standing wall of silence. Celebrities began reposting Cassie's original lawsuit. Others posted cryptic but pointed messages. Something had shifted. When court resumed, Cassie returned to the stand. But it was clear she wasn't standing alone anymore. She walked in taller, steadier, her voice sharper, her tone firmer. This wasn't just testimony. It was a reckoning. She confirmed she'd been in contact with 50 Cent's team. That timelines, messages, and other communications had been exchanged. More people had come forward since. "I'm not scared anymore," she told the jury. Not when people are finally listening. She revisited painful experiences, including a trip in 2017 where she said she was isolated after texting another artist. "He told me I embarrassed him," she said. "He said I was his property." The defense objected. The judge overruled. Cassie described an atmosphere of control, what she could say, where she could stand, who she could talk to. It wasn't love, she said. It was power. Then she turned slightly toward the gallery. Her voice calm but direct. I know some of you in here have seen what he's done. I hope you say something too. The courtroom went still. Even Diddy seemed momentarily stunned. A heavy silence settled. One of his lawyers touched his shoulder, but he didn't reap 50 Cent didn't speak. But he gave a subtle nod. Cassie saw it and continued. Courtroom observers noted the impact. Jurors leaned in, pens moving. One slowly shook their head during a particularly difficult detail. This wasn't just Cassie versus Diddy anymore. It was Cassie, backed by momentum, and the silence was breaking. Diddy's breathing grew heavier as he sat silently at the defense table, his focus locked across the room. 50 Cent remained seated in the gallery, arms crossed, eyes steady. The defense quietly requested a sidebar with the judge. Rumors swirled that they were considering a gag order to limit outside commentary, but the headlines were already written. Footage of 50 Cent's courthouse remarks had gone viral, and celebrities who had stayed silent began reposting Cassie's original claims. Some posted cryptic messages. The long-standing wall of silence was cracking, and 50 had delivered the first major blow. When court resumed, Cassie returned to the stand, this time with a new sense of purpose. Her walk was more poised, her voice more resolute. She wasn't just recounting past experiences, she was confronting them. Cassie confirmed she had shared information with 50 Cent's team, including messages, timelines, and audio recordings. She also noted that since his public support, more witnesses had come forward. I'm not scared anymore, she told the jury directly. Not when people are finally listening. Cassie then shared incidents she hadn't previously spoken about, one involving a 2017 trip to the Hamptons where she said she was isolated in a guest house for 2 days after texting another artist. According to her, she was told she'd embarrassed someone and was referred to as property. The defense objected, but the judge allowed the testimony, citing its relevance to the broader pattern of alleged control. She described unspoken rules in that world, where to stand at events, who to speak to, when she could leave a room. It wasn't about love, it was about control. Then, turning slightly toward the courtroom gallery, she delivered a quiet challenge. I know some of you in here have seen things. I hope you say something too. The room fell still. From the back, someone could be heard breathing heavily. It was Diddy, his eyes locked on her, unreadable. One of his lawyers gently placed a hand on his shoulder. He didn't move. 50 Cent remained composed, but gave a slight nod, one that didn't go unnoticed. This time, Cassie's testimony carried more weight, not just because of what she said, but because she no longer stood alone. The presence of someone as prominent as 50 Cent gave her words new gravity. Courtroom observers noted the jury's reaction. Several jurors leaned forward, taking notes. One slowly shook their head during parts of the testimony. The dynamic had shifted. It was no longer just Cassie versus Diddy. It was Cassie, 50 Cent, and a growing wave of public momentum colliding with a carefully maintained image, and that image was beginning to crack. Within 12 hours, the internet exploded. Over 60 million people had viewed the footage of 50 Cent publicly supporting Cassie and criticizing the entertainment industry for protecting powerful men for too long. For years, celebrities had avoided mentioning Diddy directly. There were whispers, but no one said anything outright. Now that silence was shattered. Usher, once closely linked with Diddy, quietly unfollowed him on Instagram. Mary J. Blige removed every photo of them together from her profile. Justin Bieber went a step further, deleting past praise and sharing a cryptic story. Sometimes we learn too late who people really are. More artists followed. Cardi B posted, "Protect women, no matter how powerful the man is." Drake liked a post that read, "Real ones speak up. Cowards stay quiet." Even stars outside the music world, Viola Davis, Gabrielle Union, shared messages of support for Cassie. But the biggest surprise came from someone no one expected. A longtime music producer who had remained anonymous for over a decade spoke out on X, writing, "I worked on 3 of his projects. I saw things, I stayed quiet. Not anymore." The post received over 300,000 likes by the end of the day. Behind the scenes, the business fallout had already begun. Sources told Variety that executives at Revolt, Diddy's media company, were holding emergency meetings. 2 major sponsors reportedly pulled out of upcoming events. One Revolt employee told a journalist, "People are jumping ship. No one wants to be the last standing next to him." Meanwhile, 50 Cent continued posting, each message more deliberate than the last. One image showed him and Cassie backstage at an awards show, caption, "You always deserved better." Another simply read, Day 5. It starts here. The message was clear, he wasn't going anywhere. Back in court, Cassie's second round of testimony was devastating. She didn't just recount past trauma, she explained how an entire system allowed it to persist. She described a control structure around her, a world where her calendar was micromanaged, she couldn't book her own travel, and any time she spoke to another man in the industry, someone from the inner circle would remind her, "Remember who gave you this life." This wasn't just her story anymore. It was a broader look at how silence, access, and power operated behind the scenes. And this time, people were finally paying attention. In her testimony, Cassie described a 2016 incident where she said Diddy allegedly slapped a phone out of her hand after she laughed at another artist's joke backstage. He said I was embarrassing him, that I didn't know how to act, that I needed to learn respect, she recalled. Then came the moment that shifted the courtroom's entire energy. With the judge's approval, her legal team played an old audio clip through the court's sound system. Diddy's voice rang out, "Don't test me, Cass. You know what happens when you push me." The room fell silent. The recording had never been heard before. Cassie's lawyers said it had been recovered from an old cloud-synced iPad she'd recently found. The defense objected, but the impact was already made. Diddy's face turned pale. One of his attorneys whispered to him, but he didn't respond. A courtroom sketch artist later noted the moment he dropped his pen and stared blankly at the speaker, as if in disbelief. By the end of the day, even Diddy's strongest supporters in the gallery seemed shaken. His carefully managed image, cool, composed, always in control, had cracked. Cassie's second day on the stand made something clear. This trial wasn't just about a relationship, it was about power and what happens when it's used without accountability. Day 5 began under intense tension. Social media buzzed over Justin Bieber's cryptic posts the night before. Outside, security lined the courthouse as if something historic was about to happen. Then, at exactly 10:13 a.m., everything changed. 50 Cent walked into the courtroom, not from a side door, not flanked by security. He came alone in a sharp black suit and dark glasses, straight down the center aisle like a man on a mission. He didn't speak. He didn't even nod. But the energy shifted immediately. Reporters leaned in. Phones lit up. Even the prosecutor paused mid-argument, letting the moment settle. Diddy saw him right away. His posture shifted, his jaw tensed. He whispered to his lawyer, his hands now gripping the table's edge. Cassie noticed too. Just a quick glance toward 50, no expression. But the room felt it. The defense began scrambling, passing notes, whispering. And 50? He just sat there, arms folded, still as stone. He wasn't there just to watch. He was there to be seen. But what happened next wasn't planned. Not by Diddy. Not by 50. Not even by Cassie's team. As Cassie described a 2018 incident at Diddy's Miami home, where she said she was locked in a room for more than a day after speaking with a music executive, Diddy began to fidget. He shook his head. He whispered harshly to his attorney. His legs started bouncing. Then he snapped. "That's not what happened," he shouted, slamming his palm on the table. The sound cracked through the courtroom like a warning. Everyone froze. Even the court reporter stopped typing. Cassie didn't flinch. Judge Harmon raised her gavel. "Mr. Combs, this is your only warning. One more outburst and you will be removed." But Diddy wasn't looking at the judge anymore. His eyes were locked on the back of the courtroom. On 50 Cent. "You've been waiting for this, haven't you? You'll regret it," he growled. Security moved fast. 2 guards stepped in, one standing between Diddy and the gallery. The room held its breath, bracing for more. But 50 didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply leaned back, crossed one leg over the other, and stared. Cassie resumed her testimony like nothing had happened. The judge didn't call for a recess. She just gave a quiet nod, and the trial pressed on. The judge didn't call a recess. Instead, she let the silence linger before locking eyes with Diddy and saying, "Control yourself or I will." For a man who built his empire on being in control, that line cut deeper than any testimony. That afternoon, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. Nobody dared whisper. Even reporters who usually slipped out during downtime stayed in their seats. Why? Because for the first time in decades, Diddy didn't seem untouchable. His outburst had stripped away the carefully managed image, the mogul, the visionary, the businessman. What remained was someone visibly unraveling under pressure. And while Diddy faltered, 50 Cent's presence only grew louder without him saying a word. Outside the courtroom, whispers were becoming headlines. Tans ran with 50 Cent stares down Diddy in courtroom showdown. Social media flooded with clips, old interviews where 50 had hinted something was off. One from 2009 resurfaced, with 50 saying, "There's things about Puff that just don't sit right with me." At the time, people called it rap drama. Now it felt like eerie foreshadowing. Inside, Diddy grew quiet. His attorneys huddled around him, their tone urgent but hushed. Across the aisle, Cassie's legal team was visibly confident. Their key witness had stood firm. Their opponent had cracked in open court. The jury noticed too. One older juror, previously calm and methodical, now sat stiff, arms crossed, eyes fixed. Another jotted notes rapidly, hanging on every word from Cassie. And through it all, 50 Cent stayed seated in the back. At one point, security asked if he planned to remain the rest of the day. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because by then, everyone understood. This wasn't just day 5 of a trial. This was the day the illusion shattered. The day a courtroom watched power unravel. The day the industry realized the silence was over, and it all changed when 50 Cent showed up.